Welcome to A Fine Time, The Nanny Revisited. This is a podcast about The Nanny, where we recap each episode and then discuss, sharing our own unique take on each episode. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Debbie. Today we're talking about episode 104, The Bobbi Fleckman Story. As usual, we'll start with a brief summary of the episode. Fran convinces Maxwell to allow Brian Setzer to film a music video at the Sheffield home after Brighton won a contest, even though neither Fran nor Max has gotten over the disaster that was their first date. With the planning and taping of the music video comes Bobbi Fleckman, a record executive who Maxwell knew years ago. The strange thing about Bobbi is that she looks like a mix between Fran and Cece. She has Fran's dark features and body type, but Cece's typical dark business attire and flat hair. Cece's concerns are seemingly confirmed when she and Fran spy Maxwell kissing Bobbi. After being mistaken for Bobbi at one point, Fran orchestrates a plan to impersonate Bobbi and end things with Maxwell as Bobbi. Only, as per usual, Fran's plan does not go as expected. It turns out that Maxwell and Bobbi were only friends, and that it was really important to keep Bobbi happy after Elton John dropped out of Maxwell's new musical. P.S. Bobbi is not happy. Most importantly, Maxwell is still attracted to Fran, even when she's pretending to be Bobbi, and he puts an end to the whole charade. Finally, Niles goes to great lengths to try to appear in the music video, much to the consternation of the director. Bernadette, do you want to add anything?
I do not.
All right, would you like to take us to scene 1 in the kitchen?
Yes, so we open up this episode in the kitchen. Niles is, I believe, pouring coffee, and in comes Fran from the back stairwell. I'm not going to get too into it in terms of what she's wearing, but generally speaking, it is important. She is wearing all black, black tights, black clothing, and she's wearing sunglasses. And
Black
so,
sunglasses.
upon seeing her, Niles is like, "Oh, Miss Fine, it's been 2 weeks. The mourning period has to end." And Fran's like, "It's just so tragic. I mean, it shouldn't have been." And Niles is like, "A lot of people screw up their first date. Now get out of those depressing clothes." And Fran's like, "No, I need to wear this. It gives me closure. Besides, black is slimming." And then she pulls out like a Hershey's Symphony bar and she continues, "And I'm going to need it."
Mm-hmm.
And Niall says, "Well, there's nothing more pathetic than a woman who eats out of frustration because she doesn't have a man." And of course, at that moment, in walks Cece, and she's holding like a barbecue like rib,
Mm-hmm.
and she comments about, this mesquite barbecue sauce sure is tasty. And of course, there's like a look shared there, and she goes on, and in comes Maxwell and Brighton, who are in the middle of obviously like some type of argument because Maxwell is saying to Brighton, "Just forget it, Brighton. It's never going to happen." Fran, of course, in her distressed state, automatically gets kind of defensive and sad. Never going to happen just because it's
I screwed up with
right.
Elton John.
Yeah, but that you're not gonna date me again? Oh, you meant Brighton.
Mm-hmm.
She, like, finally realizes. And Brighton, reveals that, he won a radio contest in which the winner gets Brian Setzer to shoot a video at their house.
Mm-hmm.
Side note, is that much of a prize?
I don't think so.
No. I would think more of a prize would be like you getting to appear in a music video, not having everybody infiltrate your home. But
Right.
anyway, I digress.
I wouldn't want that.
Yeah. Freyna, though, kind of perks up when she hears Brian Setzer's name. She loves him. He used to be a stray cat. She was listening to him since the early 80s. And Brighton's like, "Is it true that people used to listen to their music on some sort of primitive, large black vinyl disc?"
Mhm.
And, of course, Fred's like, "Oh, yes, yes." and that was when our favorite pastime was child hurling. Um, but anyway, Brighton goes back to the thing, it's 3 hours on a Friday night, this whole kind of shooting a music video, and, Fran interjects, "Oh, maybe, he has plans, dinner for 2, al fresco at Nello's, starting with the fried artichokes, God willing." And Maxwell's like, "No, I do not have plans Friday night, and I am not leaving this house." And he steps out. Cece kind of walks up to Fran, still holding like a barbecue rib, and she just kind of goes, "You want you want one?" And Fran grabs a rib. So yeah, that's the opening scene. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Debbie?
I do not.
Okay, could you take us to the living room?
Yeah, so so Fran is with Maggie, and Maggie is complaining about how she can't have a cat in her dorm at Columbia. And she turns to Fran, she's like, "You told me that your cousin had a pet and she went to Columbia." And Fran's like, "A chicken at the University of Bogota." Um, and in walks Brighton, and the comment is from Fran, "Wow, aren't you hot stuff? You know who you remind me of?" And she's like, "Oh, Barbara Stanwyck from the Big Valley." And Brighton explains, he's like, "I'm just trying to look cool for when they come to check out the house for the music video." And he's like, "By the way, how can I thank you for getting dad to say yes?" Fran holds up her left hand, gestures to her ring finger, and says, "Get your dad to say yes." And Maggie, walks over and says to Brighton that he's so pathetic. And she says to Fran, "I mean, he walks around the house all day with this guitar and he doesn't even know how to play." And Brighton responds, "Hey, you wear a bra." And Maggie's like, "Yeah, well, at least I've actually seen one." And
Mhm.
obviously, then they do that whole like, "You shut up, no, you shut up" thing. And Fran's like, "Ugh, knock it off. You're young adults. Stop acting like children." Meanwhile, the doorbell rings and Fran goes to answer it. She opens the door and welcomes the people who come in. And who walks in but Bobbi Fleckman, VP of Record Promotions, who's trailed by her assistant Chloe. And Chloe tries to say, "It's nice to meet you," but she's cut off. And Bobby's like, "Shh, I'm on the phone." And she's like talking on the phone about, "Oh, this group is so sweet, they're so fresh. Come on, they're the hottest band in town." She turns to Fran, "Don't you love Wu-Tang Clan?" And Fran's like, "With chicken or pork?" Bobby
Mhm.
Fleckman kind of rolls her eyes and like, "Well, if you saw her, you'd understand." So Fran shouts, "Brighton, the record lady's here." And then she introduces herself as Fran Find the Nanny. And Bobby looks at her and says, "Wow, you're sure living with that." And Fran's like, "Oh, I'm just retaining a little. See, I had some salty fish last night." And Bobby Fleckman's like, "Shh, you don't talk so much." Fred's like, "I'm sorry, did you lose your train of thought?" And Bobby's like, "No, it's just your voice is so annoying, honey." And then comes Brighton and he starts to introduce himself to Chloe, saying it's such an honor. And Chloe's like, "I'm nobody." He turns to Bobby, "Hi, I'm Brighton Sheffield. It's such an honor to meet you." And Bobby looks at him, "What a handsome boy. You're going to look great in all the publicity pictures." "Chloe, make a note. Let's get some color on this milk toast punim." And then she's like, "Okay, where's the father? I got to have him sign some of these release forms." And she's like gestured to go towards the office. And Brighton turns to Fran. "That was so weird. She looks just like you." And so Fran walks over to the mirror, flattens her hair. "Really? Well, maybe in about 10 years."
Mhm.
Yeah. Do you want to add anything? Or would you like to take us
Uh,
to the office?
just as an aside, I mean, it is Fran Drescher as Bobby.
Correct. Correct. I wasn't sure when we wanted to announce that.
Oh,
Um,
sorry. But,
it's okay.
I mean, because you mentioned in your summary that it's, like, a mix of the 2, but, I mean, it literally is the body
It
of
literally is Fran Drescher. Correct.
um,
Just
which
different
I think
hair.
is interesting because 'cause we'll talk about this, I think, throughout
Mm-hmm.
when people do or don't acknowledge that similarity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but anyway, we moved to the office and Bobby just walks in confidently. Cece's in there alone at the moment. Um, and, Bobby introduces herself and she asks what's with and I'm not sure how to pronounce
Renee,
this.
Renee Britt Barbie.
Yes, out there.
Renee Britt
And
Barbie.
Bobby and Cece actually have a laugh together um, over, Fran. And, you know, uh, Cece explains that she is Maxwell Sheffield's partner, and Bobby's like, "Oh, it's nice to meet a sister who made it to the top. Where's your office?" And of course, that gives Cece pause because she doesn't have one. So she just tries
Mhm.
to play it off like, "Oh, I travel a lot." And as she says it, she's kind of standing near Maxwell's desk, and she's like, "Sometimes I work, here, and sometimes," and she moves over to the couch over there, and so, and Bobby's not buying it. Uh-huh. And but anyway, Bobby moves on. Where's your partner? He's the one I'm really trying to nail down. And he's just like, well, get in line. And Bobby says, "Oh, do we have the hots for our boss?" And Cece's like, "Have we seen our boss?" And Bobby's like, "Honey, you look like a smart woman. You're not, but you look like one. Baby, you're a doormat, an old shoe, and no man is worth it. Stop being a masochist." And Cece's like, "I am not a masochist." And Bobby scoffs at her and kind of moves as if she's going to leave the office. And Cece's like, "Well, don't go." And then in walks Maxwell. And immediately he recognizes her. "Oh my God, Bobby." And they hug. And it turns out that he knows her back from the London days. And Bobby even says, "I tried to get him to produce a friend's play, but he thought it was a dog." What was that name? Hare? Hare.
Mhm.
And Cece's like, "Cats and hare?" Like, she
Mhm.
just so taken aback, aghast. And Maxwell's like, "So listen, Bobby, we have to get to have dinner together." And Bobby's like, "All right." Maxwell turns to Cece. "Cece, are you doing anything?" And of course, Cece perks up a bit. "Oh, no." And Maxwell says, "Okay, well, then make some reservations for us," and walks out with Bobby. Cece kind of trails behind them to the door, and Niles is there in the hallway. And Niles says, "Oh, Miss Babcock, I feel so sorry for you. You're going to be alone and miserable for the rest of your life." And Cece's like, "You heard what just happened?" And Niles is like, "No, what just happened?" Implying that he was just going to tell her that anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add to that scene?
No.
Okay. Can you take us to the next scene?
Yeah, so we're still in the hallway, like between the office and the living room. And Cece is, peering through a mostly closed but not fully closed door into the living room where Maxwell and Bobby are. And Fran's walking by. And Cece's like, "Oh, Nanny, fine, thank God. Get in there and flirt with Max." And Cece looks, Cece looks at her and is like, why are you in pants?
Mhm.
Okay, let's put it this way. If I miss one waxing appointment, I'm going to be throwing you out of the Budweiser. And Cece at Maxwell. And Friend's like, I know, but I blew it on the first date. Um, as a side note, I feel bad for Fran because she can't get over this. And and Cece's like, "Not you, Bobbi Fleckman. Now go put on a skirt and get in there and flirt." And Fran's like, "It's too late. I blew it, you know." And Cece's like, and she said she adds that the man hates me. And Cece's like, "So you blew it. Are you gonna let one lousy date discourage you? You wuss. I didn't even let his wife stand in my way. Oh, you think I'm pathetic now? You should have seen me as her maid of honor." And Fran's like, "Oh, forget it. He's never gonna ask me out again." And Cece's like, "It's only because he's torn between you and the other woman he loves." Fran's like, "Who's that?" Cece's like, "Me. Don't you see? Bobbi Fleckman is an amalgamation of the two of us. She is everything he is searching for a woman." She points at herself. "Beauty, brains," and then she points at Fran, "and a slut." And
Mhm.
like, "Hey, you may be onto something." They both they both peer into the living room just in time to see Maxwell and Bobby kiss on the lips.
Mhm.
Want to add?
I do not.
All right. Would you please take us to scene 5?
Yes, so we are in the kitchen and and Val are there, and actually, like, Val is, washing the dishes,
Which is
which
weird.
is interesting. Um, but, obviously Fran has been confiding in Val, saying, "Oh, what's wrong with this whole relationship between me and Mr. Sheffield? I'm not in it."
Hmm.
And again, Val's trying to reassure her regarding Bobby, like, maybe they're just friends. Like, you're always wanting to meet new people. Fran's like, that's different. That's me. What the hell does he need to meet new people for? Everybody he needs to know is right here. Val's like,
Hmm.
yeah. Um, and then Val goes on to say, how can he be attracted to you and her? Ugh, that guy's taste is all over the map.
Yeah,
So again, we
exactly.
have an instance in which like someone is not seeing the similarities, whereas Brighton saw it straight away. Um, anyway, Fran goes on to say, it's not really about me. I'm more concerned about the children. She's a career woman. Kids are just an imposition to her. And of course, at that moment, Gracie comes down the back stairwell and says, Fran! And Fran, of course, is like, what? And then she turns to Val and is like, Val, would you go? And Val nods. And so Val goes to take care of whatever Gracie's needing. At that time, Sylvia walks into the kitchen and Fran asks her, have you ever been concerned about losing daddy? And Sylvia says, once. He was sexually attracted to Kate Smith. How I get any action from that chubby chaser, I'll never know. And Fran's like lamenting again. One little disastrous date, and Mr. Sheffield is already looking at someone else. I mean, if I thought he liked older women, I would have told him the truth.
Hmm.
And then she kind of asks Sylvia, what am I doing wrong? And Sylvia says, darling, you were always very attractive to men, but you never knew how to reel them in. Somehow I never passed that on to you. She says this as she then spits out the bite of apple she just took and then continues to eat the apple. And Friend's
Hmm.
just like, I just give up. I just give up. And Sylvie's like, don't give up. Say you're out at a buffet and there's one piece of cheesecake left and some obnoxious woman tries to grab it. What do you do? And Fran's like, cut in front of you, Ma. Sylvie's like, exactly. You know, picture, you and Bobby, and I believe she says Sweatman.
I think
Um,
so.
imagine you and Bobby Sweatman are at the man buffet and grab your piece. And Fran's like, how? Um, and then in that moment, Bobby's assistant Chloe comes in and says, "Oh, Bobby, your I think it was like chicken salad or some food is here."
Your Chinese chicken salad's here.
Yeah, and so of course, like Sophie's like, "Oh, honey," she thought, "Shh," and then Fran pulls her hair back, kind of like to flatten it back as if she were Bobby, and she has an idea.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I do not.
Okay, can you take us to the living room?
So we see um, Bobby Fleckman and Maxwell. They're there, and the door in through the door comes Brian Setzer. He's greeted Brian, Bobby. He greets Bobby, Bobby, baby. And so he gets introduced to Maxwell Sheffield, and he says it's nice to meet you. And Maxwell starts talking about when he was in a rock group once, the Strawberry Sheffields Forever. Yeah, those are the days, my friend. And Niles is there, and he's like, yeah, we thought they'd never end. And
Mhm.
Brian's like,
What
you're a friend.
what's
Oh,
Niles carrying? Did you notice?
I want to say it was a cleaning product, but I don't remember.
No, it was a tray full of strawberries, which was
Oh,
very apt.
there. I did not notice that. So thank you. Um,
Mhm.
Brian asks Maxwell if he's a friend of Pete Townsend's. And and yeah, he is. And Brian's like, yeah, you're the guy that passed on Tommy. And Cece's also there. She's like, Tommy, hair, cats. Meanwhile, people are strolling in, and these are guys dressed the same. They're strolling in through the front door. Who are like basically who are these guys? Oh, they're the rest of the Brian Setzer Orchestra. And the question to Niles is, do you have enough food? And in walks Sylvia eating, and Niles is like, well, we did. And so did you consider that the end of the scene, or did you continue?
I continued.
Okay, good. I did too, but I always like to check when I'm not
Yep.
sure. So further in, like all the way in the living room, there have been tables set up with food, and Cece's asking, "How am I going to lose weight with all this food here?" And this guy standing next to her is like, "Oh, remind me later. I'll give you my trainer's number." Um,
Mhm.
we cut back to like by the foyer, and Sylvia goes over to Bobby, and she's like, "Excuse me, Miss Fleckman. There's a limo driver out back who has a message from you from a musician." Bobby's like, "Who?" And Sylvia's like, Stink." And Bobby looks at her like, "You mean Sting?" Sylvia's like, yeah. And so Sylvia and Bobby go off, and Fran comes, excuse me, Fran, Fran, Fran pops out of the bathroom because as Sylvia and Bobby walk, down that hallway, Sylvia taps on the door. Fran pops out, and I think it's important to note what she's wearing here. She's wearing a black dress, for her, a very sedate black dress.
Yeah.
And
She's
she
obviously trying to, imitate someone else, right?
Yeah, she's trying to look like Bobby. She has her hair, very flat and tied back in a very severe fashion. She's like, "Oh my God, Brian Setzer, Brian Setzer." And then she like calms herself down. "Brian, baby, Sheffield's daughter wants an autograph. Do you mind signing your CD?" And he's like, "Sure, what's her name?" And she's like, Freddie Fine." And then he does, and she's like, "Thanks, sweetie." He's like, "You're welcome." And so she walks over to Val, who's like across the room by the food. And she's like, "Where's Mr. Sheffield?" And Val's like, "Oh, I don't know, Miss Fleckman. Did you just change clothes?" And Fran's like, "Val." Val's like, "Oh, I almost blew it, didn't I, Fran?" "Val, go home. Go, go." And Val looks sad, kind of hurt, but then she ultimately does leave.
Yeah, she kind of looks like a kicked puppy.
Just a little bit, you know. Do you
Because
have
she
anything
kind
you
of
want?
looks, like, back so sadly, like, with big kind of eyes, like, "Really? Really?" And
Right.
Fran
Wait,
continues to, like
tell her to leave. Get out. Go.
exactly.
Poor
Yep.
Val.
Yeah, so we cut to then Niles in the kitchen with Chloe, and Niles is complaining, like, "What's worse than all of this?" And he goes on, and Chloe's like, "Have you ever had to go buy tampons in the middle of the night?" Niles is like, "No." And Chloe's like, "Then shut up." And Niles is asking, why is she, if it's so bad, why is she work, why is she, if it's so bad, why is she working where she is? And it turns out, she's really hoping one day that she'll get to be in a video. And
Mhm.
Niles is like, well, isn't it pathetic, to essentially degrade yourself or whatever for 15 minutes of fame? And at that moment, the director comes in and he tells Chloe, oh, like one of their extras, like can't make it. They have an Esther Williams bathing suit. They need to find someone. And of course, Niles immediately is like, oh, is it cut high on the sides? Like he is
Mhm.
willing to wear an Esther Williams bathing suit to be in this music video.
Right.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I do not.
Okay.
Um,
Can you take us back to the living room?
Yeah, so we're now in the living room, and we're sort of trying to film the music video, and we see Brian Setzer singing and the orchestra dancing, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and eventually the director calls cut, and um, Chloe starts asking Niles what happened. "I thought you were going to be in the music video." And he's like, "Oh, no, no, no. I was only kidding. I'm not going to make an idiot of myself." And she looks at him slyly, and she's like, "The bathing suit didn't fit." He's like, "It was a petite 12." The director tells
Hmm.
everyone to take 5. We'll try it again. Um, and Niles immediately belies what he previously said and says, "Well, if you open up one of the scenes in the back, I don't turn around," which is promptly rejected.
Hmm.
Do you want to add anything? It's a very short scene.
Yeah. I don't have anything to add.
All right. Would you
Um,
like to take us to the office for a more substantive scene?
yes, it is a more substantive scene. We're in the office, and Fran, of course, is currently disguised as Bobby. So she enters the office, and Maxwell's at his desk, kind of working. Looks up, oh, Bobby, and Fran kind of does like, oh, yeah, that's me.
Mhm.
And she comes around. We got to talk about us. She like sits down on his desk, but immediately pops up, realizing that that is a Fran thing, not a Bobby thing, right?
Mhm.
And then Fran continue, us. Fran continues, it's awkward, over, what we're doing. And Maxwell's confused. Like, what thing, like, and Fran's like, as Bobby, like, well, I can tell you're crazy for me. And he's like, I just thought we were like old, good friends. Um, and then, oh, wait, I have adorable Nanny's mother.
Yes. Yeah.
What was
So,
that
excuse
line?
me.
Sorry.
Yeah. So Maxwell's like, I'm a little confused here. I was under the impression we're just good friends. And Fred's like, what? Are you telling me there's nothing between us whatsoever? And he's like, well, I'm
Hmm.
dreadfully sorry if I've given you the wrong impression. She's like, no, no, no. That's okay. That's okay. I misread signals all the time. At my age, you tend to become muy desperado. Well, anyway, gotta go. Ciao.
Yeah.
And
And yeah, well, I mean, they're both up and they kind of end up kind of kissing.
oh, and
Like,
I'm sorry. I totally did not actually answer your question. I realized
yeah,
I jumped one
it's
line below it. Um, she says that it's obvious that you're crazy about me, but it's never going to happen. I mean, I'm old enough to be that
oh,
adorable
yes.
nanny's mother.
Oh, yes, that's correct.
Sorry.
So they do like this kind of awkward kiss, but then they like actually kiss, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and then kind of after that deep kiss, they're hugging and Maxwell's like, "Oh, like Bobby, I just suddenly felt something." But then he realizes that there is a price tag on the back of the dress. And so he realizes this is not Bobby, this is Fran.
Mm-hmm.
And so he decides to really kind of dig in, right? Like he is like, "Oh, like I've always like been suppressing this or whatever for 20 years." And Fran's like, "I thought you said there was like nothing between us. We're just good friends." And he's like, "Oh, that's just a line I use. I've used this on the nanny thousands of times." And she like acts as if she's about to like faint, right?
Mm-hmm.
From hearing
It's
that.
like she has a neurologic.
Yes, like she is just like obviously so distraught at hearing this. And Maxwell's like, "Now, where were we?" And she's like, get off me, leave me alone." But then they end up kind of like she's limp and they have like a limp kiss, is how I would describe it. How would you describe that? Very awkward additional
Um,
kiss.
I
Because
mean,
she just goes kind of limp in his arms.
yeah, I wouldn't say she goes limp. It's like she sort of like melts, but like not in a cute way.
Hmm. But yeah, so you know, Maxwell's saying how she's making him feel like crazy and impulsive. "Will you marry me?"
Mm-hmm.
And she immediately at first is like, "No," and then she's like changes her mind like, "Oh, I've got a rabbi on speed dial." And finally Maxwell goes, "Miss Fine."
Mm-hmm.
And then she's like, "You knew it was me all along?" He says all along. As the audience, we know, nope, he did not know all along. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway, Fran continues, "Well, I'm holding you to your proposal. And in New York State, a verbal agreement," and Maxwell cuts her off, "don't push it." And she's like, "Done pushing?" "Almost." "Why were you kissing, Bobby?" And Maxwell explains, "Oh, it's to thank her. Ever since Elton John dropped out, Bobby offered to talk to Mick Jagger to replace him. And so, it's imperative that we keep Bobby very happy. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No.
Okay. So
Um,
what is happening to Bobby as this is happening?
Bobby is trapped in a room, and she is screaming and like making a lot of very angry sounds while Sylvia
Mhm.
sits in front of the door with a Walkman saying, I don't get today's music. The Red Hot Chili Peppers, give me the 60s. Cream, vanilla fudge. Now that was a turn on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. And then kind of our end credit scene is like more of the music video that's being filmed in the living room. We see close-ups of like Brian and like the orchestra, and there's like inexplicably like tiki like statues in the back.
Mhm.
Um uh, and then you see like everybody else kind of on the sidelines kind of dancing along. And then Niles just goes for it. He walks into the behind Brian, and he's carrying a tray, and he starts kind of like dancing along and really making exaggerated facial expressions. And it takes longer than I thought it would, but the director's like, cut, cut, cut. Get that damn
Mhm.
butler out of the shot. And then so
Exactly.
of course, like, Niles eventually, like, leaves, but not before, like, going kind of closer to the camera as he's leaving, and again, making kind of exaggerated facial expressions.
Mhm.
And that is the episode.
That is the episode. Is there anything you want to talk about before we get into our shticks?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, just the whole thing of Bobby being a doppelganger for Fran,
Mhm.
it's just there has never been a mention previously of someone that Maxwell has known for 20 years who looks exactly like Fran, right?
Mhm.
So,
Correct.
that's
And
one thing.
can I just chime in on that point?
Mhm.
I have two different points. One, well, first off, yes, you're absolutely correct. But don't you remember at the beginning of season two, we saw Maxwell date Leslie, who looked very similar to Fran.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, again, not a perfect
Wonder
doppelganger, but no one like Maxwell didn't notice, Fran didn't notice, Niles noticed,
Mhm. And
CC
then I
noticed.
guess as part of the whole thing, right? Because, like, obviously, um, people saw the resemblance because, Fran was able to make that thing, but also there were times when, like, people didn't acknowledge it. Like, again, Maxwell had no problem initially knowing that that was Bobby, you
Mhm.
know, when she walked into his office. And yet he confused the 2 at first in his office until he saw the tag,
Mhm.
which also means he kissed another woman, like, who he thought was another woman.
Correct. But now, I sort of wonder if subconsciously, like, because different people have different pheromones, right? Like, don't you think he like? I mean, you're right. Consciously, he did kiss another woman. Save that thought for later in the season. Um,
Mhm.
but like, I would imagine that even if Bobby Fleckman and Fran Fine were two different people, their body chemistries would be different.
Yeah. I mean, he said he felt something, um, and I get again, it's a classic, like, fictional trope of, like, having people unknowingly, like, fall for someone, like, I don't know. It kinda makes me think of, like, the 12th night trope where,
Mhm.
like or, like, She's the Man is the modern day version of that, where people are confused because they're feeling this way towards a person when they thought they felt it for another person and, whatever.
Mhm.
I understand the trope, still not a fan with him
Fair.
thinking and also the fact that he did kiss Bobby as a thank you, which is like,
Mhm.
that's not how I thank my friends.
That
I'm
is
not
not how
sure
I
about
think my friends
you.
either. No.
Um, that's like, I mean, because like from what we saw from the vantage point of like Cece and Fran, is it was like a full on mouth kiss, right? It wasn't like a cheek kiss. or,
Right.
anything like that. It was a mouth kiss. That sounds weird. But, um, again, I think it's totally fair for Fran to be like, "Why were you kissing her then, if you're
Mhm.
just old friends?" But yeah, so it's interesting. It was interesting throughout the episode to see who commented and who did not about the similarity.
Mhm.
Because again, Brighton comments about it right away.
Mhm.
Val seems to like not understand that it's the same, but then she also confuses the two. I
Mhm.
don't know. It's all over the place.
It is all over the place. The other point, just relatedly, I wanted to mention because you do point out that like Maxwell theoretically has known Bobby for 20 years, but Bobby doesn't like she gets the like paperwork that needs to be brought to the father, and when she sees Maxwell, she's like, "Oh, I knew that name sounded familiar." Like
Yeah.
if you know someone for 20 years, I feel like you would know them.
Yeah.
I
And
don't
one
know.
would think too, like that you would think someone at the Sheffield residence would have known who was coming.
Mhm.
I don't know. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of point that out, like, because we as the audience know that he did not know the entire time.
Right.
But that again begs, like, was he just so distracted with his work? Because he immediately recognized Bobby in the first time they saw each other.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know. Is there anything you'd like to talk about before we get into our sticks?
No.
Okay. So favorite fashion.
Um, I didn't really like almost anything anyone wore in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it's worth noting, like we kind of talked about how Bobby wore pretty much black the whole time. Um,
And like long, like
mhm. So like long
full
skirt,
coverage.
yeah. And
Yeah.
although I will note that I think when we meet her, she does have like a bit of like bell sleeves going. Not are they bell sleeves? I don't
Mm,
know, like poofy
yeah.
sleeves at the bottom.
Yeah.
But she has very severe. Her hair is very severe.
Mhm.
And like
It's reminiscent of like that time in the first season when Fran tries to act more like posh.
correct in My Fair Nanny.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then, the one time when Cece's like, Miss Nanny Fine, get in there and flirt with Maxwell. Why are you wearing pants? That's kind of cute outfit. She has matching like tank top and pants, which shows just a little bit of midriff. I don't know.
Hmm.
I didn't think the fashion in this episode was particularly notable. How about you?
Yeah. I agree. It wasn't particularly, you know, there was no like statement piece. Like occasionally we have like something very iconic.
Hmm.
And I don't think we really had that in this episode.
Agreed.
So yeah. Are you ready to move on to notable New Yorkers then?
Yeah, and I think we need to start with Bobby Fleckman.
Yes.
As you point out, Bobby Fleckman was played by Fran Drescher. Bobby Fleckman was actually Fran Drescher's character in the 1984 film This Is Spinal Tap, and that's
Oh,
according to our friends at imdb.com.
I did not know that.
Oh,
Interesting.
okay. Well,
I've
that
never
that's
watched I've never watched that
I
movie.
haven't either.
Interesting. Okay. That makes a lot more sense about why they decided to go that direction then.
It's still
But
weird, but yeah.
yeah. But that also like I was wondering as I was watching like the episode, it would have been interesting to see how they filmed the scenes in which both Fran, Fine,
And Fran.
and Bobby are in the same because they filmed in front of like a live studio audience, right?
Hmm.
It would have been very interesting to have been in the audience watching them
I
try to like
agree.
this. But yeah.
I agree.
Yep. So did you put the Hershey Symphony Bar in
I did
or no?
not.
Okay.
I didn't.
Because
But
sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So I wasn't sure.
for some reason, I put Hershey's Kisses, and I was like, but we talked about this last time, so I don't know where I got that from. If
I
it was
mean, it's
a
a
different type.
Hershey's bar, but it was specifically like
Yeah,
I
then I
think
missed what type of Hershey's bar it was.
yeah, it's chocolate.
Exactly, chocolate.
Yeah. Uh, did you put the mesquite barbecue sauce or no?
I
I
did
mean,
not.
it's pretty self-evident, I would think.
Exactly.
Again, there's a reference back to Elton John who was in last week's episode.
Mhm.
Um, and we already kind of talked about him, and he's so well known. I think our lovely listeners probably know who he is.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so there's the Stray Cats or Stray Cat.
So Brian Setzer, and then the
Yeah,
Stray Cats. Brian
yeah.
Setzer is, and I quote, and then I quote, iconic guitarist, songwriter, vocalist, and three-time Grammy Award winner, according to our friends at briansetzer.com. The Stray Cats were an American band founded in 1979 in Massapequa, New York, which included Brian Setzer, Lee Rocker, and Slim Jim Phantom. And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Hmm. Um, I'm gonna say Brighton's comment for '90s nostalgia or
Okay.
not.
Okay.
Well, because I guess it's not '90s. Whatever. He's talking about vinyl records.
Yeah. Um, did you before that, did you catch the reference to Nello's?
I had that as after.
Was that after? Oh,
Yeah,
maybe you're
because
right. Sorry. I
no,
didn't
it's
jot down
okay.
the vinyl records here.
Yeah. So yeah, so Isnello's an actual place then.
It is. It's an Italian restaurant that's found on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And that I found that in an article by the New York Times.
Hmm. Okay. Barbara Stanwyck in the Big Valley.
Barbara Stanwyck was an American actress, dancer, and model whose career spanned 60 years and was known for her versatility and strong presence. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. The Big Valley was an American Western TV series that was set in Stockton, California, that aired from 1965 to 1969. Also, according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Hmm. The Wu Tang Clan.
An American hip hop collective that formed in 1992 on Staten Island. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia. What about you missed Columbia, which we've talked about previously, and then
Yeah.
the University of Bogota.
Okay.
Do you
Go
know where
ahead.
Bogota is, by the way? Because I did not until I googled it.
No.
It's the University of Bogota is apparently the main campus of the National University of Colombia, like
Oh,
the
gotcha.
country Colombia, not
Country.
yeah. And
Yeah,
that's according to our
that
friends
makes sense.
at Wikipedia.
Hmm. Um, I wasn't sure that whole I couldn't pronounce Barbie thing. Are you gonna talk about
That'll be in
that?
Yiddish Cop.
Check?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. Just wanted to make sure.
thank you.
Uh-huh. And then hair. I think we
And
talked about hair before, have we?
I don't think
Or no?
we have. Hair is a rock musical about the hippie counterculture from the late 1960s. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Hmm. And it was also made into a movie
Yes.
later as well. And we have like the upteenth reference to cats
Mm-hmm.
in this. Maxwell is never going to live that down
Correct.
forever, ever. Um, okay, so then we have, uh, sorry,
I can jump in.
yeah,
Um, Fran comments that if she misses one more waxing appointment, she'll be pulling beer for,
oh yeah,
providing for
Budweiser.
beer. Yeah, Budweiser.
Mhm.
It's a beer company that started with the development of a lighter ale in 1876, according to its
Mhm.
website.
Yeah. Kate Smith. Is
An
that who you
American,
have next?
I do, yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
She's an American singer who is known as the First Lady of Radio. She died in June 1986. That's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Okay. And then did you put buffet or no? I
I
didn't
did
know
not.
how to. Okay. Again, I think, yeah. Now, Strawberry Sheffield's Forever is a play on Strawberry Fields Forever, right?
I will believe you.
Okay. Song by the Beatles. It's
Okay.
Strawberry Fields Forever. So I thought it was just kind of a play on that name.
I just thought it was like a 1960s. Here's our interesting band title.
Yeah, it could be both.
Um,
But yeah, go ahead.
because there were a bunch of oddly named bands like the Jefferson Airplane and the Strawberry Alarm Clock,
Hmm.
which is the first one
Yeah.
I think of.
Yeah, I just thought it was like because I know Strawberry Fields Forever is a Beatles song. So I
Mhm.
just thought that was a direct kind of reference to that one.
Okay, I'll believe you. I can go with it.
Okay. Okay. Pete Townsend.
He's an English musician who co-founded The Who, according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Hmm. Tommy.
The Who's Tommy is a rock musical based on the 1969 rock opera Tommy by The Who.
Hmm.
And that is
Again,
according,
another thing that apparently Maxwell Sheffield passed on.
correct, which we're getting the sense that his instincts are not great.
Nope.
Which, in fairness, we know considering how well he is dragging his feet with Bram. But I digress.
Exactly. Yeah. Sting, not stink.
Oh, I actually missed that one. Sting's musical musician.
Hmm.
Um, Sting, according to our friends at Sting.com, um, he is a musician, which I said before. Um, this is actually very dense. Do you have anything you want to add about Sting?
Is he British?
I believe, yes, he was born in October 1951 in Walton, Northeast England.
Okay.
His
Yeah.
given name is Gordon Sumner,
Oh, huh.
I believe.
Interesting. Esther Williams.
And she was an American actress and competitive swimmer, according to our friends at Wikipedia.
I believe, like, in old Hollywood movies, she often had, like, kind of, like, swimming scenes and, like, synchronized swimming.
Which would make
I
sense
think
since she
she
was
was
a competitive
I think she
swimmer.
was yeah, I think she was, like, particularly known for, like, that aspect of her acting too,
Hmm.
combining the swimming background. Um, did you catch the name of the song that he was singing in, like, the video?
The house is rocking.
Mhm. That makes
Um,
sense because that's a lot of the lyrics.
correct. Um, so apparently, the song the house is rocking. The title of it is a play on what was a popular bumper sticker back in the 1970s, which used to say, "If this van's a rockin', don't bother knocking."
Mhm. Hmm.
Um, and so the song was eventually performed by Brian Setzer and Marty Stewart.
Mhm.
That's according to our friends at societyofrock.com.
We have Mick Jagger.
An English musician, singer, and songwriter who's best known for being the frontman of the Rolling Stones.
Mhm. Sylvia's not sure about the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah, so they're an American rock band that was formed in 1982 in Los Angeles and known for incorporating a variety of different types of music into their songs.
Cream.
A British rock band formed in London in 1966, according to our
Mm.
friends at Wikipedia.
Vanilla Fudge.
An American musical group formed in 1965 in New Jersey and known for its dramatic arrangements of contemporary pop music. That's according to our friends at vanillafudge.com.
Did you have any other ones on your list?
The only other one I had was the Brian Setzer Orchestra, which was a band
Okay.
formed in 1990 by Brian Setzer and was known for its swing and jump blues music. And that's according to our friends at Wikipedia.
Okay. Quite the list.
Hmm.
So time for some Yiddish cop.
Yeah, so I have three entries. The first is when Bobby sees Brighton, she refers to as milk toast punum. Milk toast is not Yiddish, but punum means face. Um,
Okay.
we also have where Bobby greets Brian. She says, Brian, Bubby. That's a term of affection, which Bubby usually means grandma.
Yeah.
Um,
I was kind of like, that's an interesting choice to like use that term of endearment toward a male friend.
I
Or is that
mean,
common?
it is, you use it towards people who, it's just a term of endearment, like a pet
Okay.
name.
Okay. Because I
Um,
always, like you said, associated it with more like grandmother
yeah,
figures.
yeah, I think it's weird, but people do it. So,
Okay.
and then the last one is the B'nai B'rith Barbie. So Barbie is obviously a reference to the Barbie doll, who I think means no further introduction. Um,
Hmm.
but B'nai B'rith International is an organization that was founded in 1843 that staunchly defends Israel, advocates for global Jewry, champions human rights, combats anti-Semitism, promotes Jewish unity, and leads in disaster relief. And that's according to our friends at b'naibrith.org.
Okay. I thought it was interesting though too about like the question of is it pork or chicken?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Because
Pork is
pork
not
is not
kosher.
kosher. Yeah.
Yeah. There are only so many times I can say this without being like,
Yeah.
you guys heard this before.
Yeah, that's I know something that you've like really started to notice having watched back with a critical eye,
Correct.
just how often they are not kosher.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Are you ready for some 90s nostalgia?
Old cars.
Yes. There are old cars. And the whole like music video aspect of it in the home, like all the old equipment they were using and everything. And just like
Mhm.
we saw shots of what the music video would look like. Um, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, even just the like radio contest that Brighton won feels sort of
Mhm.
dated.
Yeah. Yep. And I was gonna say too, like, I think it's kind of funny how like Brighton's making fun of like vinyls when they've made a comeback as of late. Um,
Well, as one of Fran's high school classmates will say to her in a future episode, if you wait long enough, everything comes back. Of
yep.
course, she's talking about fashion, but in this case, it
Hmm.
works too.
Yeah. Hmm. Do you have any others?
I mean, um, Bobbi Fleckman having to bring the contracts over and like on paper instead of sending an
Hmm.
email. That feels very dated.
Yeah. The whole fact that we haven't heard of Bobby at this point prior, like again, in the day of social media and all that kind of stuff, if Maxwell had social media, you would think he might be friends with her, like on, one of those
Mhm.
platforms, and then
Right.
the others may have come across her before, or they
Hmm.
might be more up to date, or I don't know. Um, it's just again interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
um,
Then I
yeah,
know
so I try to double check if there was anything else that really, again, a lot of the fashion seemed
dated.
dated. Um, Yeah, I think we could probably move on though.
I concur.
So we can actually get into the kiss count this week.
Hmm.
So, how did you count the kisses?
I counted two of them. How did you count
Okay.
them? Did you?
So, which one did you not count from the three? Because there was that awkward first one, and then they
Hmm.
go in for a full one, and then there's what I described as the limp one.
I guess I didn't count the limp one, but as you're saying that, I guess maybe we should count three instead of two.
Okay. I
I'm
mean,
fine with that.
okay. Again, they weren't all satisfying. And in fact, not really satisfying since originally he thought she was someone else.
Exactly. It's weird.
But technically, yes, they did kiss.
But we're not counting when Maxwell kissed Bobby Fleckman and
No, yeah,
Bobby
we're not
Fleckman
counting
was okay.
because that's a different character.
Got it.
Yep. Um, Now it's funny to me that he did an even bigger like how many times has he proposed to her at this point?
Oh, don't worry, there are more coming. Sorry, bit of
Yeah.
future fun.
Yeah. But like it's not technically the thing,
No,
even
it's
though he
not.
took it back.
No.
So yeah, I think we're ready for some more future fun.
Well, as I just stated, Maxwell will propose to Fran multiple times in the future.
Mhm.
And he gets out of it frequently. Um,
Mhm.
so next week we're going to see why Fran was right to send Val home to not blow her cover when she was impersonating Bobby. Next week, Val aids in them getting kidnapped after Fran got Chester kidnapped. So that's
Mhm.
not ideal. But in season 6, Val does start taking a Chinese herb that's supposed to improve her intelligence, and it really works. But then she stops taking it because it makes her very gassy. And she's like, "What's the point of being brilliant if no one will come near you?" Which is a good
Mhm.
point. Um,
Mhm.
and then the last thing I have for us is this is not the last time that Fran Drescher is going to make an appearance on The Nanny as someone other than Fran Fine.
Mm.
Near the very end of season 6, she makes a cameo appearance as herself, Fran Drescher.
Oh, interesting.
Hmm.
Very meta.
It's peculiar and weird. Just
Mhm.
like this episode was peculiar and weird.
Mhm.
So that's what I had for future fun. I think we're up to our episode ratings. And as a
Yes.
reminder, we rate each episode from 1 to 5 lipsticks, with one being the least and 5 being the most. Um,
Mhm.
I think I think it's your turn to go
It
first.
is my turn to
Oh,
go
thank
first.
goodness.
Yeah. Um, I'm struggling a bit figuring out what to assign it just because is it the worst? No.
Agreed.
Um, it doesn't make me as angry as some other episodes I've made, but I'm also not really a fan of it because
Mhm,
like I've mentioned, like regardless of everything, Maxwell did kiss Bobby as a thank you. And then he kissed Fran thinking she was Bobby.
mhm,
And again, I understand the trope that goes with that, but still, this is like coming off of an episode where they had a disastrous date, so things are kind of like fragile in a sense.
mhm,
Uh, I don't know. And then like him doubling down and like trying to kind of like torture her by making her think that he does have these feelings for Bobby.
mhm.
I don't know. I think I'm just going to go ahead and give it a 3. What about you?
I don't like this episode very much. I think it doesn't make a lot of sense. I just don't care for it. Like if I'm gonna rewatch an episode, this is not one of them that I'm gonna rewatch. And then I think to myself, well, do I like it more or less than First Date last week? And I think I like it less. And I also didn't like last week's episode. Um,
Mhm.
as you said, is it the worst episode? No. Is it the best? Hell no. I think I'm giving it a 2.5 because I
Mhm.
can't.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I do not.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you today. We hope you had a fine time with us as we revisited The Nanny. Join us next time when we'll be discussing episode 105, Ransom.
If you'd like to reach us on social media, you can find us on Twitter at Nanny Revisited. You can also send us email at afinetimenannyrevisited@gmail.com. Have a great week.